Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
It had been building for months. No, years, if I'm being honest. Not the kind you notice right away, but the kind that leaves things hollow before you even realize something's missing. The kind of erosion that takes your love, your self-worth, and leaves behind a routine that looks like a marriage but feels like solitary confinement. We weren't yelling anymore. That had stopped long ago. It wasn't peace, it was silence. Every day, we moved through the house like colleagues in a dying company, efficient, polite, emotionally bankrupt. Still, I tried. I'm not some emotionally repressed stereotype who refuses to communicate. I talked. I asked. I showed up, even when I didn't feel like it. I planned dates, cooked dinners, and took time off work for anniversaries she always seemed to forget. I'd put together surprise weekends away, only to hear her sigh about the packing. I'd set up candlelit dinners, and she'd text under the table. That night, I didn't expect a revelation. I expected another routine dismissal. We were sitting in the living room, each of us on opposite ends of the couch, like rival diplomats forced into a summit. I'd made her a cup of tea, her favorite blend, the expensive kind that smells like a spa day and costs more than my weekly lunch budget. She took it without looking at me, sipped it absently, and continued scrolling through her phone. "I miss us," I said gently. "I feel like we haven't connected in weeks. I know you've been busy, but I don't know. I need something more. Something real." She didn't even look up. Just another slow scroll with her thumb. Then she set her cup down, exhaled like I'd asked her to carry a boulder up a mountain, and finally glanced at me. Boredom etched in every feature. "Your needs," she said. Her tone clipped and almost bemused, "don't matter to me right now." It was almost clinical, like she was reading off a lab result. No flicker of regret or discomfort. Just a clean, cold surgical strike to the heart. I blinked, trying to process what I'd just heard. I was stunned. It was one thing to feel like an afterthought, to sense you're slipping down someone's priority list. It was another to hear it confirmed, unapologetically. "What did you say?" I asked, because I needed her to hear it again. She shrugged. "I'm tired. Work's been brutal. I can't carry your emotional baggage too. We all have our limits, and right now, I'm at mine. So yeah, your needs? They're not on my radar." And that was it. No argument. Just her calmly telling me I didn't matter. Not in a rage, not in a moment of heat, but in a calculated moment of truth. I stared at her, and something shifted, like a gear locking into place. I didn't yell. I didn't try to convince her she was wrong or that I was worth more. I just nodded. Because in that moment, everything became crystal clear. I had been spending years of my life investing in someone who saw me as a footnote. And somehow, I'd still hoped she'd wake up one day and remember who we used to be. But hope is a dangerous thing in the wrong hands. It keeps you chained to people who've long since stopped deserving your loyalty. She went back to her phone. The conversation was over, as far as she was concerned. She'd spoken her truth, and now it was time to see what TikTok had to offer. I sat there a while longer, watching her, not with rage or heartbreak, but with clarity. I saw her not as the woman I married, but as the woman she'd become. And I saw myself as I really was. Exhausted, slowly disappearing. She had told me my needs didn't matter. She was about to learn what life looked like when I stopped meeting hers. I didn't leave that night. I simply stood up, picked up her empty cup of tea without a word, and walked into the kitchen. It was the silence she didn't notice that told me everything I needed to know. She didn't call after me, didn't ask where I was going. She stayed glued to her phone, scrolling through curated lives that likely made more sense to her than the one she was living with me. I washed the cup carefully, dried it with the striped towel she always left hanging crooked, and placed it back in the cabinet. Then I opened my laptop and started a list. Just methodical notes on all the things I'd been doing, quietly, habitually. The bills I paid, the errands I ran, the social favors I arranged, the emotional damage I absorbed without making her feel guilty. Line after line, the list grew, and with each bullet point, something in me grew stronger. The next morning, I woke up before her, same as always. But I didn't make coffee. I didn't do the little things she never thanked me for, because from now on, I wasn't going to keep proving my usefulness to someone who didn't see it. She came downstairs late, hair still damp from a rushed shower, muttering about a missed alarm. The kitchen was quiet. No fresh coffee, no toast in the rack, just a single note left on the counter. "The machine still works. So do your hands." She barely glanced at it. She didn't say anything as she grabbed her bag and rushed out the door. That was the first day I started taking myself out of her world. The invisible scaffolding I had been holding up behind the scenes, I began dismantling it, one silent bolt at a time. She came home late that night. I didn't ask where she'd been. I didn't care. Dinner? I had made enough for myself. One plate, one fork, one chair pulled out. She frowned at the table. No food for me? I looked up from my plate. You didn't mention being hungry. A pause. I always eat with you. I didn't argue. I just shrugged and continued chewing. She made herself a sandwich and sulked into the living room. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. It kept going like that. When her gas tank ran low, I didn't fill it. When the laundry piled up, I washed only my clothes. I stopped checking her calendar for conflicts, stopped handling RSVPs for events she'd dragged me to, stopped managing the tech issues she never bothered to learn to fix on her own. And the funny part? She didn't notice. That's how deep my support ran. I had made her life so seamless that my absence felt like coincidence at first, then minor inconvenience. I started spending more time outside the house, late walks, quiet coffee shops, a gym I hadn't visited in years. I started calling old friends, making plans she wasn't part of, saying yes to things I'd declined for years because she either wasn't interested or found a way to make me feel guilty for going without her. At first, she didn't ask where I'd been. Then, one evening, she finally did. You've been distant lately, she said, standing in the doorway while I was folding laundry. Is something going on? I looked at her, my hands still moving, folding a shirt with deliberate precision. I'm giving you what you asked for. She blinked. What do you mean? You said my needs didn't matter, so I stopped involving them in your life. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came. She closed it again. I didn't press the moment. I folded another shirt. That night, she hovered a little more. She brought up her day, mentioned her coworker's drama. She went to bed early. I stayed up late, not because I was avoiding her, but because I wasn't chasing her anymore. You learn something strange when you stop trying to make someone care. You see them clearly. You see the gap between what they think love is and what love really means. I wasn't cruel. I simply stepped away from the controls and let the house fly on autopilot. And that's when the turbulence started. Emails began slipping through the cracks. She missed a client deadline because I wasn't there to remind her of it. She forgot a dinner party we were supposed to attend together. I hadn't RSVP'd because she never asked. Her sister called me to ask why we weren't at a family gathering. I don't know, I said calmly. You'd have to ask her. She handles her own calendar now. There was a long pause on the other end. I didn't enjoy watching her life get harder, but I wasn't going to keep holding the pieces together while she acted like I was unnecessary. That week, she asked if I wanted to plan a weekend getaway like we used to. I smiled, politely declined, and said I'd already made plans. It didn't take long for her confidence to buckle under the weight of her own independence. At first, the disruption was barely noticeable. Missed appointments, minor delays, small things she thought were beneath her attention. A week after I turned down the getaway, she cooked dinner. That was new. 3 dishes, her version of a peace offering. It would have been nice if it weren't so obviously performative. I ate quietly, thanked her, and washed my plate. Another week passed. I noticed her clothes weren't folded anymore, tossed haphazardly on her side of the bed. She started coming home earlier, leaving work at times she used to insist were too busy. I didn't ask why. She did ask, though. She asked if I was seeing someone. The question came out of nowhere, her voice sharp. I was trying to play casual while betraying the anxiety underneath. I paused from cleaning out the cabinet I used for tools and spare batteries, met her gaze steadily. No, but I wouldn't blame you for assuming it. That answer shook her more than a denial would have. I watched her go quiet, process the ambiguity, realize she no longer had access to my thoughts, my plans, or my attention. She stood there for a moment, lips parted, then turned and walked away. In the weeks that followed, the change accelerated. She began trying to take interest in my hobbies, asking about my workouts, flipping through the pages of the novel I'd left on the table, even suggesting we take a walk together in the evenings. I went on my walks, but I never extended an invitation. She started doing chores she used to mock, cleaning the guest bathroom, organizing drawers. She even fixed a dripping faucet in the kitchen, something I'd offered to do for months, back when she would just sigh and tell me she was too mentally exhausted to deal with the house right now. I could see her trying to rewind the clock, to revert to something resembling domestic partnership. But it was too late. She wasn't returning to me. She was chasing a ghost of herself, someone who used to be attentive before her complacency calcified into entitlement. One morning, she asked me if I still loved her. It was early, and I was halfway through tying my shoelaces. "I care about you," I said truthfully, "but love requires nourishment. I spent years feeding it alone." She said nothing for a long moment, just sat there on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor like she was waiting for someone else to give her a script. She started crying more often. Silently, mostly always behind closed doors, sometimes in the bathroom while the shower ran. She thought I couldn't hear. When she did cry in front of me, I didn't rush in. I acknowledged. But I didn't offer solutions. She had told me once that my needs didn't matter. It was only fair that I let her experience what life looked like without my constant presence cushioning her emotional blows. It was around then that the social fabric began to unravel. Her best friend, Tara, called me. Said she hadn't heard from her in a while and was worried. I told her I wasn't sure what to say, maybe she should reach out directly. Tara asked if everything was okay between us. I answered honestly, "It's recalibrating." That phrase made its way back to my wife somehow. I came home a few days later to find her sitting on the couch, waiting like a child caught sneaking out after curfew. "Recalibrating?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is that how you see this?" I sat down across from her, resting my hands calmly on my knees. Yes. I was pulled so far out of alignment for so long that I stopped recognizing my own life. "I'm adjusting now. You should too." "You're punishing me," she said, more accusation than observation. "No," I said gently. "Punishment would mean I want to hurt you. I just stopped rescuing you. There's a difference." She didn't reply, just stared at me like she was seeing a stranger in her own home. And that's when the real cracks began to show. She started messing up at work. Missed deadlines. Unreturned calls. Her manager reached out once when he couldn't get a hold of her. An emergency meeting she slept through after forgetting to set her alarm. She used to brag about being the sharpest one in her department. Now she was scrambling to maintain an image she could no longer afford to fake without the infrastructure I used to provide. One evening, she snapped at me. "This whole house feels like it's collapsing." I looked around, clean floors, neat counters, organized shelves. "No," I said calmly. "The house is fine. What's collapsing is the illusion that you were holding everything together." That night, she didn't come to bed. She sat downstairs for hours, the glow of her phone screen lighting her face in the dark. I saw her scrolling through old photos, vacations, birthdays, dinners I had planned. Let her finally understand the life she had been living was not self-sustained. And for the first time, I think she did. The invitations had already gone out weeks ago, some charity dinner she had helped organize for her office. One of those events where everyone dressed like they were better people than they actually were, smiling through perfectly whitened teeth while subtly competing for who had the best marriage, the most successful spouse, the best blended work-life harmony, as she always called it. She asked me to come. She mentioned it like a favor I could do for her, something that would make her look good. The edge in her voice had softened since our last few confrontations, less contempt, more concern. A quiet desperation was settling in now, dressed up in civility. I said yes. I had no intention of embarrassing her. I wasn't there for vengeance. I just wanted to see how she presented the polished version of our crumbling life. The night of the event, I dressed in the same tailored suit she used to brag about, back when she still admired me. I could tell the second I walked into the room that she hadn't expected me to look composed. She blinked twice when she saw me, then pulled me into a stiff hug, like we were actors playing out a script in front of a live audience. All night, I was the image of calm. I shook hands, made conversation, asked smart questions. People gravitated toward me, probably more than she expected. She tried to redirect the attention a few times, subtly pulling me aside to catch up, but I wasn't playing the game the way she was used to. During the main speech, one of her coworkers toasted the powerful couples who prove that support, patience, and teamwork are still alive and well. Her name was mentioned directly. Ours, as a couple, was applauded. She smiled, tight-lipped. Later, over drinks, someone asked me what my secret was for keeping things so solid all these years. I turned to my wife. "Should I tell them?" I asked. She laughed nervously. "Oh, don't get him started." But I didn't laugh. I took a sip of my drink, set it down carefully, and turned back to the man who had asked. "The secret," I said, "it's realizing that sometimes the foundation isn't solid at all. It's just hidden cracks. Ones you keep plastering over because admitting there would mean everything you've built is at risk." The man chuckled politely, not sure whether it was a metaphor or a confession. But her face changed. The color drained. just enough to be visible under her makeup. A little later, one of her colleagues came up to me, drink in hand, and said, "You know, I always thought you were the one riding her coattails." Turns out, I think we had that backwards. It wasn't meant as an insult, but it landed like a hammer in her world of appearances. On the way home, the silence in the car was a thick, palpable thing. "You didn't have to say that," she muttered finally, eyes fixed on the road. "I said nothing untrue," I replied. "If the reality hurts, it's not the fault of the words. It's the truth finally showing its face." She didn't argue, just clenched the steering wheel a little tighter. Over the next week, the impact rippled outward. Her social circle began to fray. Friends who had always believed we were her success story began to message me privately, confused and curious. I simply told them, I stopped doing everything, and it all fell apart. That should tell you what was really going on. Some of them didn't respond. A few said, "I'm so sorry, I had no idea." Others remained suspiciously silent. Her professional life wasn't faring much better. The same manager who once praised her as a visionary now called to say she was falling behind on deliverables. I could hear it in his tone. He wasn't blaming her yet, but he was no longer shielding her either. I knew exactly why. She had relied on the invisible labor I provided. The quiet calendar reminders. The nights I proofread her proposals. She had mistaken that support for her own strength. Now, stripped of it, she was slipping. At home, she oscillated between guilt and aggression. One morning, she left a note beside my coffee mug, the same way I used to leave them for her. It said, "I know I took you for granted. Please don't give up on me." I folded the note and put it in my drawer without a word. The next evening, she exploded. "You're punishing me," she hissed, slamming a cabinet door. "This is emotional cruelty." "No," I replied quietly. "This is a mirror. You're finally looking at what I've been living through." There was nothing more to say. She knew it. I knew it. What happened next wasn't theatrical. No screaming match, no suitcase by the door. Just a slow, inevitable disintegration. Our relationship, once dressed up in social appearances and mutual obligation, was exposed for what it was, hollow. One Friday evening, I told her I wouldn't be coming home that weekend. "Where are you going?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "To a place where I don't feel like a background prop in someone else's play." Her eyes welled up. "Are you saying it's over?" I met her gaze, steady and calm. "No. I'm saying I'm finally living in reality. You're welcome to join me there. But I'm done pretending." Then I left. And this time, I didn't look back. 2 weeks passed. No grand confrontation. Just a slow and steady unraveling. The house was quieter without me, but not in the way she was used to. This wasn't the silence of a peaceful weekend. It was the kind that lingers after something essential has been removed, like the echo left behind when the power goes out. She texted a few times. I replied briefly, never cruel, but never inviting. I stayed at a small apartment across town, one I'd quietly kept on standby through the years as a workspace. A place I once used to write, reflect, and breathe. It had always felt like a backup plan, but now it became a sanctuary. It didn't have the warmth of our shared home, but it also didn't carry the weight of disappointment. No reminders of a woman who'd stopped seeing me as a human being. Just blank walls, clean surfaces, and space to think. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected, men I once laughed with over beers, now middle-aged, their own marriages in various stages of bloom or ruin. We talked more honestly than we ever had before. One of them told me, "You always looked like the guy who had it all figured out. But maybe you were just carrying more than the rest of us ever realized." He wasn't wrong. I'd carried a marriage on my back while pretending it was flying. Meanwhile, I heard things. Mutual friends. Neighbors. Her own sister, who called me out of the blue to check in. It turns out, the facade wasn't holding. My wife, once the paragon of composure, was slipping. She called in sick to work 3 times in 1 month. She'd canceled plans with friends. Someone mentioned they saw her crying in her car outside a grocery store. And then, inevitably, she asked to meet. She chose a coffee shop we used to frequent. The irony wasn't lost on me. A place we once escaped to, back when we still believed in us, when our lives were full of plans and whispered hopes. I arrived 5 minutes early. She was already there, nervously stirring a drink she hadn't touched. She looked thinner, tired, not in a way that begged for pity, but in the way people look when they've been carrying regret instead of sleep. "Thanks for coming," she said softly. I nodded, took a seat. She stared at her hands for a long moment, then said, "I've been thinking about what you said, about not pretending anymore." And I realized. I didn't just take you for granted. I dismissed you. I treated you like a resource, not a partner. And I can't take that back. She paused, as if expecting me to say something. I didn't. I wanted her to keep going, not for me, but for herself. I thought I was the strong one, she continued. The career woman, the one who didn't need emotional coddling. I told myself I was being practical, independent. But the truth is, I used your love like a safety net. I wanted the benefits of marriage without the accountability. And when you stopped giving, I saw what I had done. Her voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry. I believed her. I really did. It wasn't performative. It was a woman realizing the cost of her detachment. I forgive you, I said, and I meant it. But that doesn't mean I'm coming back. Her eyes brimmed with tears. I figured. I needed to say it. I needed you to know that I see it now. We sat in silence. She wiped her cheek, trying to maintain a semblance of composure. I let her. I don't hate you, but I love myself more now. And that's something I forgot how to do while trying to make you happy. She nodded slowly. I get it. I stood to leave, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd fallen for all those years ago. Not in her appearance, but in her humility. She wasn't the same. Neither was I. On the way out, she said one last thing. You were the best thing in my life. I just didn't realize it until you were gone. I paused. That's the tragedy of it. And then I walked away. Back home, my new home. I opened the windows, let the late afternoon breeze fill the rooms. I sat down, took a deep breath, and realized something profound. I had spent years waiting for her to see me, but I didn't need her to anymore. The life we built had collapsed because it was built on a lie, her belief that I would always be there, no matter how small she made me feel. She had told me my needs didn't matter, so I left her to deal with hers alone. And when everything around her crumbled, she finally saw the truth. But by then, I had already rebuilt myself, brick by brick, alone, but whole.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.